Welcome to the Astro Psyche. This is your weekly astrology forecast for August 5th through the 11th. And thank you so much for your patience. My apologies for the delay. This week is about relational retrospection. We have Mercury continuing its process through and deepening into the retrograde in Virgo and Leo. And then we also have Mercury and Venus making a conjunction this week as well. So there's lots of themes around contemplation, retrospection, and especially around relationship and purposefulness in your life. My name is Shawna McGrath. I'm a psychotherapist and an astrologer, and I'm so excited, as always, to be able to share the astrology of this week with you from a psychological perspective. So so this week it's really interesting because there is a simplicity in this week in that there's not a lot of contacts and aspects that are becoming exact this week, but we're sort of deepening into themes that have been keyed up, so to speak. So one of the core themes this week is we have Mercury retrograde continuing. So last week we had Mercury stationing retrograde, meaning the retrograde began on, when did that happen? On Sunday, the 4th, Mercury stationed in Virgo at 4 degrees of Virgo. And so we're continuing this retrograde process. Mercury will be firmly in Virgo until next week. The week of the 12th of August, Mercury will move into Leo. But for right now, we're firmly in the retrograde process of Virgo. And Mercury is the mind, the thought process, the intellect, the way that we make sense of things, the stories that we tell, the myths that we hold, and the way that we communicate. It is the function that helps us transition and translate things from one thing to another. So Mercury, when we're thinking about Mercury, we're thinking about communication, of course, so like practical talking, writing, speech, nonverbal communication as well, but we're also thinking about how we transition and move from one thing to another. And when this planet, of all of these things, is retrograde, there is an internalization of this process. We can think of it as a more introverted process or of a contemplation or retrospection. And Mercury goes retrograde about 3 or 4 times a year for about 3 weeks at a time. So we're constantly in this process of intellectually, like the intellectual part of the psyche and the communication part of the psyche is moving forward, gathering more information and thinking more about things. And then there's sort of, it's like a wave swell. Then there's a moving back and a more introverted or contemplative sort of time. And I think that Mercury retrogrades, we can see them as not just a time for blaming things on Mercury retrograde, though of course if that's helpful for you, feel free to do that. I think that a lot of us do find that when Mercury is retrograde, there is a heightened experience of where our communication system is breaking down in some way. And so, of course, this doesn't happen out of nowhere. This is, even though it can feel that way sometimes, I think, this is where we start to notice the things that maybe cause a disruption or a delay, or where we want to redo something or we want to look at something. And so we can think of Mercury retrograde as a 3-week period that happens about 3 to 4 times a year that helps us to review and refresh and reimagine. And this is all happening. So to make this a little more in the now, we can also look at where this is happening and the aspects that Mercury is making to help us ground into what may happen. Now, of course, as I'm talking about this, you may have some areas of your life that you're already thinking that you want to think about, that you want to reimagine, that you want to think about a different way of being, or maybe you've already been thinking about moving into a different area or shift. And Mercury retrograde is a fantastic time for contemplating this and for doing any kind of behind the scenes work. So Mercury's retrograde this August. So let's see, the dates for this to remind you are from August 4th through August 28th of 2024. And this is happening from 4 degrees of Virgo to 21 of Leo, that little section of the zodiac. And so Mercury retrograde in Virgo is about contemplating the purpose, the values, the systems, the routines, the rituals in your life. Virgo is so much about the many things that when they come together that create a beautiful system. And so Mercury in this place is emphasizing the way that we live our life, and is that functional for you? Is it in alignment with your values, because Venus is here? And really, does it work for you? Are things working for you? And there's also this theme around depth of meaning when we're talking about Virgo too. Like, what is this really for? That everything is meaningful, everything is purposeful. And I know that when I say that, I realize that it may feel overwhelming. When I say that, that doesn't have to be grand gestures. That can be as simple as deciding to really enjoy the things that you enjoy, the small little moments. That can be reveling in your morning drink of choice, or taking just a second to notice how good it feels to have the sun or the shade or the wind on your skin. Things like this. So very simple things, but also, I don't know, for you, maybe there is something structurally in your life that feels kind of like clunky. I think that's kind of a retrograde sort of vibe sometimes, is there's like, if there's a clunkiness, what would help to grease the gears? And let's see, also, Virgo is very much connected with healing, and the healing in that there are things that we do, there are practices that we do, there are rituals and there are methods, and that there can be a sense of renewal when we move into that. Now, of course, when we're talking about Virgo, we're also talking about this idea of having very high expectations for oneself and for others. And so I encourage you, with any sort of Virgo transit or Virgo season, and I think this definitely applies with this Mercury retrograde, with Virgo, it's so important to hold acknowledgement and acceptance of what is, while also striving to improve or to work towards what it is that is going to be gratifying for you. So like holding the now and then also holding the future. For folks that have a strong Virgo emphasis in their birth chart, it can be really difficult to be in the now when the now is maybe not as good as it could be, like that it's not meeting the potential or the ideal. And so I think for all of us over the next month or so, it's really important to hold space for both potential and existence, and that if there are thoughts that start to come up that maybe are self-critical or self-deprecating, we can look at that and notice when that comes up and how, and where those critical storylines or voices come from and how they get activated, and give them some loving, tender care. Now, let's talk a little bit about Venus moving into this equation. So Venus has freshly just moved into the sign of Virgo, and Venus will be here for the next month or so. So Venus also moved into Virgo on Sunday, the 4th of August. A lot happened on Sunday last week. So Venus is the planet, of course, about relationships, beauty, aesthetics, healing, harmony, feminine qualities, the qualities that we connect with feminine or femininity, either culturally, personally, or collectively. And Venus is very much about this sense of needing a social contact and moving toward or moving away depending on what feels pleasurable and enjoyable to us. So Mercury and Venus will make a conjunction. So they've been sitting together since Venus moved into Virgo on Sunday. And they're going to be together for a little bit this week and then next week, but they are making their exact conjunction this week. And when this happens, this is a meeting of Mercury, the mind, the intellect, the transitionalness that Mercury symbolizes, and then Venus, relationships, harmony, beauty, pleasure, enjoyment in general. And so I don't know what this is going to look like for you. This is a bit of a more minor aspect because these planets move very quickly. So it's a very quick and brief transit, but it is about healing and this like reimagining or reprocessing or bringing in a repair to maybe something that was troubling at a more mental level, or maybe a communication process that needs to be fleshed out a little bit more. I know this might sound paradoxical for a Mercury retrograde, but I feel a certain sense of union or coming together with this aspect as well, in that it is a time where there can be a coming together for something around communication in relationships. And so I think at a practical level that could involve having a healing relationship or clearing the air, or having a conversation or conversations that bring folks together, that is soothing and enjoyable or reparative in some kind of way. This can also be an inner union and an inner healing or an inner integration. Whenever two planets have a conjunction where they're together at the same point in the zodiac, there is a union sort of experience. And this can be external, as in something coming together. It can also be internal, as in like an integration in the psyche. And so I think this week it's really great to be like noticing what you're noticing as far as things coming together, or looking for ways that you can have experiences that are enjoyable and that are reparative and healing. And the other thing I want to say about this too is that we're still within or we're just beginning really, the Leo new moon lunar cycle. And so that lunar cycle is all about being expressive and creative and being seen for who it is that you are. So I think there's kind of this synergy around Mercury Venus that is highly relational and communicative, and the new moon in Leo process, that lunar cycle that has this theme around connecting with people and places and situations where you feel seen, expressive, even like spontaneous, and where you can feel like you're appreciated and where you can be who it is that you are as much as possible. So those are some of the themes there. Now, also this week, a few of the more minor symbols, astrological signatures, we have the sun in Leo still making a minor aspect, a sextile to Mars and Jupiter in Gemini. And so this is a very energizing aspect. It's a little subtle, but it's really about ambition and excitement and action and assertiveness. And so depending on what's happening in your life and how things are configured in your chart, there might be this kind of little mild surge of energy. And I think this can be connected to like telling someone some news or sharing an announcement, or looking at opportunities that are exciting or vitalizing to you. And I'm saying that because the sextile, so sextile is when planets are 3 signs apart. So Gemini, Cancer, Leo, 3 signs. the sextile is about like these little tiny opportunities that we can take advantage of. We don't have to. It's not something that's going to require something of us, like maybe a square or an opposition, but it's something that you can lean into and utilize if you want. So in this case, the opportunity is around taking advantage of like something that's exciting, something that's vitalizing. And I'm saying that because the sun is vitality. It's also the ego and the sense of self, the I amness. And then Mars Jupiter, it has this very dynamic energy. Now we're also talking about Mars Jupiter in Gemini too. So there is something also communicative about this. And I also want to mention too, Mars and Jupiter are fairly close in the zodiac right now. Mars is at 10 degrees Gemini. Jupiter is at about 15. And so they will make their exact conjunction next week. But they're like in it. They're already sort of melding together. And so Jupiter being the sense of expanding and grandizing anything that it is in contact with astrologically, and then Mars being that excitement, assertiveness, the musculature of the body, but then also the natural immune system or defensive system, the literal immune system, I guess biologically, but then also psychologically. And so there's this thing also here around looking at maybe where you can have, I don't know if boundaries is quite the right word, but I think it's kind of like doing things that you know are going to take care of you and are going to be vitalizing. And that may be putting a barrier or boundary around something. That might be saying no to something, yes to something else. So you know what is going to be right for you, but that's kind of the theme to like really lean into here. And I think that this pairs very well with the Mercury retrograde and Venus, because there is this contemplation process that's already going on here. And so I think that this week you might be getting some good feedback on what is exciting and vitalizing for you and how to run that through to gain some more information. Now, I do want to mention that we're having our first quarter moon in Scorpio next week on the 12th of August. So that's happening on Monday. And that means that this week we are in the waxing phase of the lunar cycle. So we just had our new moon in Leo on Sunday, the 4th of August. And so the waxing phase of the lunar cycle is about growth and moving forward and being expressive and trying new things. And the waxing phase of the lunar cycle kind of reminds me of the Fool card in the Tarot. It's about moving from your heart and just trying it out and seeing what happens. Now, you might say, Shawna, well, that sounds kind of paradoxical if Mercury is retrograde and that's more about like introspection and not doing things. Yes, totally. Astrology has paradoxes. And so I think there's kind of this emotional feeling that may be more extroverted, but then the thinking mind, there's a lot of like contemplation that's going on, but there might be this kind of enthusiasm for exploring. Okay, so I'm going to pull some tarot cards for you. And let's see, are there other things that I wanted to say about this astrology? Yeah, I think there's a lot here around talking, communication, thinking. This is a very contemplative sort of week, and depending on what's going on with you, that might be more something that is happening at a more personal, just for you process. It may involve other people in your life. I think that kind of depends on your temperament and what's happening in your life. And if there are conversations that need to be had, or you've been kind of like wanting to have, you might kind of be like thinking into it and then actually doing it. I don't know, but that's there's kind of a lot of that is happening. So also, at a more inward level, a more psychic level, there are themes around contemplating your life, your actions, what feels meaningful to you, unions, healing, relational repair via retrospection. And I think that I want to be clear also that relational repair can happen outside of the relationship that created the rupture. So what I mean by that is if there was a rupture with a person or people, the repair of that does not have to be done by having a conversation with that person or those people. That repair can happen via any other healing method that feels good to you. It can happen by working in therapy or with a counselor or someone who is a good friend or a mentor. It can happen via journaling or meditation or spiritual journeys, anything like that. So do what is right for you. Always, always, always. Let's see. And yeah, I think also too, there's kind of this thing around like, are you being called to do something about something? And I'm feeling that there might be some energizing action to do something about something that maybe you've been sitting on for a while. And I know that Mercury retrograde, we always want to, like some of the stock advice is to not do new things, not initiate, not a launch. And, you know, when you're called, you're called. And the astrology is not going to stop for you. The astrology is just helping us to understand what we're already feeling. And if you feel like doing something that maybe feels contradictory to what you're seeing or hearing or reading in the astrology, I think it's really important to look at what feels like a yes for you and what feels like an opening versus a contraction. And the astrology should ideally always be validating and affirming and empowering so that it helps you make a decision and that you're making a decision of your own volition and based on what feels good for you. So that's what I have to say about that. Okay, so I'm gonna shuffle more fully here. So this is a place where you can find a sense of connection to yourself in whatever way works for you. So you can move into a place of relaxation via stillness or via movement. Bring your focus into something either within you, a sensation of feeling in your body or your breathing, or something outside of you, a sound or an image. If you like, you can imagine yourself in a column of light that moves down all the way to the center of the earth and moves up towards the sky. If you have a practice of connecting with ancestors, spiritual guidance teams, or anything that invokes wisdom for you, you can ask for guidance there. And you can ask for guidance around a particular scenario, if that feels right for you. And finally, if there's one card, number 1 through 3, that feels right to you, you can pick that number 1 through 3 now. All right. Oh, okay. Okay, so first card. So this is the Tarot of Spells and Potions. This is the first card is the Strategy card. So this card is not in the traditional tarot. It is unique to this deck. It's like an extra. So the imagery in this card is a person with a very flouncy yellow dress, and they have a yellow wide brim hat on, and they're holding a pentacle and a double-edged wand, and they have one foot. It's kind of almost like they're walking on some sort of like either a tightrope or over a river, and they have one foot on a sword and one foot on a wand. Ooh, yeah, okay, so I'm feeling this. Okay, so of course the term strategy is about being strategic, following a plan, following a method. I'm like super feeling Virgo in this card, this like intentionality and systematic sort of way of being. And I'm really struck by the sword. Let's see if I focus it more for you here for the video. Okay. I'm really struck by the contrast of the sword and the wand. In the traditional suits of the Smith-Waite deck, the tarot, the sword is a symbol of intellect and communication and the thinking mind. The wand is a symbol of inspiration and passion and that more like intuitive, excitable sort of energy. And so I think it's really interesting that this is coming up with when we have an emphasis with Virgo and Mercury, which feels very sword-like to me. And then we also have the Leo energy here with the Sun in Leo and the Leo lunar cycle, which is very much with the wands. And so do you have something that you're strategizing? Is there a strategy that's happening? And how do you feel about that? Do you feel like you're being strategic? I think that this is sort of, and I want to read from the guidebook here too for this card. I also think it's interesting that the dress is yellow, because yellow is a symbol of, in the Indian chakra system, the belly and the stomach and the sense of will and ego and deciding and moving forward. It's a very self-directed sort of energy. And let's see. So the other thing too here is this feels very mercurial, because this person is sort of moving from one thing to another, and it almost looks like they're in a river. So they're kind of like on the boundary of the situation. The book for this deck says strategy. You have chosen a strategy and you stick to it. Your choice is correct. Follow the rules and act according to the plan. Success awaits you. Add a little discipline. And so I think that's really interesting. I wonder how that sits with you. I wonder what comes up for you. I think it's very curious that this card is about emphasizing that your choice is correct. Whatever you have chosen, stick to it. And always, of course, like if that doesn't really feel right, I think this card could also say if there's something that doesn't feel right as far as the plan that you have, now is about finding that strategy that does feel like you can stick to it. That it's really important that you feel good about where you're going. Okay, second card is the Nine of Swords. So this is the card of worry and anxiety. This card symbolizes where there might be experiences of like really stressing about something. and that you're kept up at night about something. It's something that is just weighing on you. You're thinking about and stressing about it. And I think the beauty of this card is that the emphasis is around your internal experience, and that there is something here that like the Nine of Swords is when the amount of worry that you have is taking a toll on you. It's affecting your psyche. It's affecting your health in some way, your well-being in some way. And so there's something here around a strategy that helps you to process your worries, or helps you to manage your worries. Yeah, I wonder how you're sleeping. I wonder how things are for you. There's a certain sense of, I think the Nine of Swords can also speak to insecurity, and it may not be necessarily anxiety for everyone. It might be a sense of insecurity. And when I say insecurity, I'm talking about like not feeling like you can fully relax and trust a situation. And this is where the strategy comes in, because the strategy allows you to know that it's going to be okay, because you have a plan, because you can settle into something. Even though we know the plan doesn't always go according to plan and things shift and change, but you have something that you've settled on. And so I wonder if that's a part of what is happening here. The second card is the Six of Cups. And the Six of Cups is about nostalgia. It's about our past. It's about our ancestry. It's about our early childhood experiences, the way that things were. And it's often a symbol of the things that we look back on fondly. Now, I pulled this card reversed, and when I pull the Six of Cups reversed, it's usually telling me that there's something that we're kind of like idealizing from the past, that we want it to be how it used to be. And I'm not saying that that can't happen, but there's something here, I think, where dwelling on how it was, how it used to be, is like creating some sort of anxiety or stress, or it's sort of like there's some kind of block there. And okay. So I think another way to read this is that there is stress and anxiety in your past that you want to bring some healing to. And, I wonder if this is something that you're doing. I mean, I think that we're all on a healing journey constantly throughout our lives, but there is something here where you're going on this path, and this path is going to maybe bring up some fears, some anxieties, and then how do you cope with that? How do you soothe yourself? How do you bring healing to the part of you, the young part of you? Six of Cups is about youth, the young part of you that gets scared. So that's what this feels like. So this is like, okay, how can you soothe yourself? How can you bring a sense of healing and repair? And there is a strategy. There is something that you are moving towards or going down, and that strategy also implies trying something new to me, also like a new plan or a new project or a new phase of life. And so whenever you try something new, that can bring up our concerns, and even just sort of like how is it going to be. And then that sort of activates the young part of us that wants to be loved and appreciated and safe and secure and all of those things. And so I think that's a big part of what's coming up this week, is this furthering your journey, facing your fears, and knowing that they're probably more exaggerated than you realize. So like, it's okay, you're gonna be okay, and then bringing some healing and integration to yourself. All right, that is your weekly forecast. I hope that you enjoyed this. It's always such a pleasure to share the astrology of this week with you. If you want to find out more about me and my work, you can find me on my website, theastropsyche.com. I'll see you soon. Bye.